Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about what ages you should be breeding your rabbits at and why you don't want to be breeding them too early. So one of the most common questions I've been getting here lately is what age should people be breeding their rabbits at? Now, traditionally in meat rabbits, we used to see particularly New Zealand's being bred at 4, 5, and 6 months. So somewhere in that, we've gotten the idea that that is normal, that is what we should be doing with these large breed rabbits. And that's not actually the case. So the thing you have to understand is that New Zealand's were specifically bred for fast growth rate and early sexual maturity. This was for the commercial markets. Now, these people, when they were doing this, were not looking at longevity. Most rabbits that were used commercially, and I say that were because we don't have a lot of commercial rabbitries left in the United States. The idea was by 18 months to 2 years, these does were pretty much completely tapped out, and it was on to the next generation. So they weren't worried about making sure that these does were breeding to 3 and 4 years old. And let's be honest, in a commercial setting, you're worried about the dollar value that those animals are bringing in, so you're not really worried about their quality of life. Now, what we've gotten in the homesteading movement is, the whole point is people want to know, one, what's in their food, but they want to know, two, that the animals have had a good life. Now, this isn't going to be a topic of debate about what you think of cage raising or colony raising or anything else. We're simply talking about the timelines involved in raising these animals. So when I tell everybody that for any rabbit that's going to max out over 10 pounds, so this is your New Zealand, your cows, Satins, Palominos, Silver Fox, Americans, and the list goes on, Rex, all of that. When you're talking about an animal that matures at 10 pounds or more, they are not fully mature until 9 months. Now, the ARBA actually lists these animals as what's called a 6 class, meaning that in each sex, they have a junior, an intermediate, and a senior class. So your juniors are going to go to 6 months, your intermediates are going to go 6, 8, and then seniors are going to be 9 months and up. This is important to know because for the people who tell me, oh, I breed my New Zealands at 5 and 6 months, you have to understand these animals are classified as juniors. And by juniors, what we mean by that is they are the mental and emotional equivalent of about a 12-year-old girl. Now let that sink in for a minute. Do you really want to be breeding a 12-year-old? What kind of quality of life is that animal going to have if they're breeding at that kind of age? Now that goes for the same when we're running 6, 7, 8 months. This is an intermediate, so this is basically a teenager, right? So we're looking at 15, 16 years old. Are they capable? Yes. Are they going to screw it up? 9 times out of 10, yes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. If we're waiting until they're 9 months and up, that's 18, 19 years old equivalency in humans. And now we've got an animal that's actually hit closer to a full maturity. And actually, it's probably a little closer to about a 20-year-old in humans. The latest thing I've seen is physically, females tend to be fully mature at about 20. So, but now we've got more of a mental and emotional maturity. And why is this important? Well, just like if you're breeding a 12-year-old, they're more likely to make mistakes. They don't really understand. Their body isn't fully mature yet. So when I see a lot of people, and this makes me a little crazy when a lot of people say, oh, first-timers, they lost a litter, that's normal. It's not. It is not normal. If you are waiting until your rabbits are closer to 9 months, and they're actually hitting that maturity level that they should be hitting, the chance that they're going to screw up that litter, throw it on the wire, kill their kits, abandon them, whatever, is much, much lower. How much lower? The study that I read a while back says that breeding a doe too early, they are 3 times more likely to lose that litter. That's a big deal. 3 times more likely. Not saying that a first timer at 9 months won't make mistakes. Occasionally you will get one that just doesn't get it. But for me personally, if I know that I'm 3 times more likely to get a correct litter by waiting a couple months, I'm going to do that. The other reason you want to wait until 9 months is because they are not physically mature enough, what you run into is the increased chances of uterine scarring. And very few people ever talk about this. I read a university study about it a few years ago, where when they went in and they looked at commercial New Zealand's, what they found was a lot of them were stopping production at 18 to 24 months because of severe uterine scarring. And then the thing that they figured out was it was from early onset breeding. So it's a very big deal. If you want to get life out of your doe and give her some kind of quality of life, you really need to be waiting. It's only 3 months. The time to wait from 6 months to 9 months, it's 3 months. But here's the thing that's kind of interesting. So if you're breeding her at 6 months, she might be tapped out by 18 to 24 months. If you're breeding her at 9 months, she can go as much as 3.5 years before you start to see a real decrease in litter size. Now, for me personally, I don't have all the time in the world to keep producing rabbits and keep backfilling these holes. I want a good relationship with my does. I want a good, healthy, happy doe. And again, this is all subject to opinion, but I want a doe that is ready, that doesn't throw her babies on the wire, but that can have a nice long life. Most of my girls, by the time that they hit 3.5, because we are primarily show breeders, I let them go all the way until they're 5 and 6, and whenever they quit breeding, and then they get retirement homes here. I know that's not the norm for people that are just meat producing, but that is what we do here. We go ahead and let them live out their days. If they've been a good producer, I think that's the least that we can do for them. Beyond that, so when you're breeding your doe at 6 months, she is also twice as likely, if I remember right, it's twice as likely to not produce enough milk. So what happens is, even if she can raise those kids, a lot of times what you're going to see is litters born to does that are bred way too young. They are not going to grow as fast. And if you've got to spend a lot more time pumping feed into them, was it really worth breeding them an extra couple of months early? In my mind, no. So not all of your breeds, of course, like I said, this is going to be for breeds that are over 10 pounds. So I know there's quite a few people now doing Harlequins. Rex are kind of on that funny line of they're big rabbits, but you can get away with breeding Rex closer to like 7 months, 6.5, 7 months. They're kind of an oddball. Harlequins, your Florida whites, your smaller rabbits, you can be breeding them usually at 6 months, which is kind of nice. Now remember that they don't grow as fast. They don't max out at the full size, so that's something else to keep in mind. So another thing that I hear a lot when people say, well, okay, I was told that if my doe's going to be in the 10 to 12 pound range, I can breed her at 9 pounds because she's 90% of the way to her weight. I think that kind of stuff is hogwash because you don't know that she's 90% of her weight. Just because her weight window for her breed standard says 10 to 12 pounds, she might be a 12-pound doe. And if she would be a 12-pound doe, breeding her at 9 pounds is a far cry from 10%. So that doesn't really work either. Really, it's not that much longer to wait. So please, please, please do not be breeding your does until they're closer to 9 months. You can fudge at 8 months if they're right at the max for their standard, or if you're starting to see some obesity. Now, on the other side of that, that's pretty much for our girls. So what's going on with our boys? Well, boys are always early. So with the smaller breed rabbits, it's not unusual for males to try and be ready at 4 and 5 months. It's not a problem. There's no real problem with breeding a male too early. Just be prepared for a couple of things. One, a lot of times the boys, when they're young like that, don't really know the program. Some know exactly what they're doing, but some of them can be a little bit slow to breed. It's more likely to cause them to start spraying early. It's just kind of the way it works. I have found that with my boys, if I can keep them kind of away from the girls until they hit that maturity level at 9 months, I get less spraying. Now, maybe that's just how it's worked in my barn, but that's what we've seen, is that if we can hold back until they've really matured, we get less spray. And nobody really wants to deal with spraying bucks if they can avoid it. That said, I know sometimes it becomes one of those things where your girls are ready before your boys are at that age. And what are you going to do? By all means, go ahead and breed them. In the larger rabbits, I have used bucks as young as 6 months. They're, ready to go, so it's fine. But like I said, I do see a lot of onset of early spraying if I use them at 6 months. But there's no physical problem with doing them too early. Just make sure you're inspecting your boys first. Make sure that everything looks okay. Testicles are dropped. Everything is what it should be. But if they're willing and able, go ahead. Because they're not carrying a litter, there's no actual detrimental effect to the buck. I saw that mentioned somewhere the other day where somebody was trying to tell me that breeding bucks under a year old can kill them. And I'm not sure where that started, but not true. So using your boys too early, that's fine. Now, most big class rabbits won't breed. Like I was saying, most of them won't breed until they're 7 and 8, 9 months anyway, because they lack the maturity for it. When you go to wean your litters, make sure that you're weaning them out and gone and separated by like 10 weeks at the very latest. Because every now and then you will get an early breeder. And this happens to everybody eventually if you're not right on top of it. Bucks will start trying to hump everything that moves by about 8 weeks sometimes. Depends on the breed, but when we had New Zealand's, especially 8 weeks. And you will get, especially in anything that was once a commercial line, so you'll get out of Californians and New Zealand's and some of the satin lines in particular, you will get does trying to lift at 10 and 12 weeks. So you don't want to do that to them. It will stunt their growth. That's another big reason not to breed them too early. It will stunt their growth, so make sure that you are getting those litters separated out so that you're not running into problems. We don't want problems. So that is it for today from Sprague Homestead. I hope that kind of answers a little bit of what age you should be breeding your rabbits at, what age you should not. It's kind of picked up steam, and unfortunately what's happened is we are getting a lot of that recycled in other YouTubers that don't know, that are just getting started in rabbits, that are trying to tell people to breed early and they don't understand. But it gets passed around in a lot of these articles that we see every spring in all of the major magazines that they can breed at 6 months. And I tend to look at it and say just because they can doesn't mean they should. That's how I look at everything. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that's the right move. So if you have other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Send me an email, send me an Instagram message. I get them pretty much anywhere. I'd be happy to take the time and try and answer a question for you, or we'll try and feature it in an upcoming Mailbag Monday. Speaking of which, I'm doing my first live stream in about 15 minutes. I know this is going to come out Tuesday, but I'm shooting this on Monday. So that is it for today from Sprague Homestead. We will see you next time. Happy homesteading.